Okay, I think we'll go ahead and jump right in. We'll get started. Others will be joining us here, and the panelists will be speaking at the end, so people still have time to join us. Hi, I'm Cindy Snider, and I'm the Small Business Loan Officer for Virginia Community Capital, serving Southwest and Southside Virginia. I have a few items to note before we get started. First, today's webinar is being recorded. We'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered next week, and the link to the recorded workshop will be included. Second, if you would like to ask our panelists a question during the webinar, please use the Q&A function and not the chat. The Q&A feature can be found in the Zoom toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Questions submitted to the chat will not be answered. Our moderator will monitor the Q&A box and address questions throughout the discussion. And please note that all attendees have been muted. BCC is a CDFI that was founded in 2006 with a seed investment from the Commonwealth Governor Warner, and BCC Bank was launched shortly after in 2008. With a mission to get capital into Virginia communities. We have two buckets of loan funds. One is for real estate, which includes multifamily, low-income housing, and we can bridge historic and low-income housing tax credits. We also offer small business loans. We are a preferred SBA lender, which means we can process those requests quicker and easier. We lend to nonprofits. Because we are a nonprofit, we understand nonprofit financials. Our small business loans range from $150,000 to $7.5 million. The funds can be used for owner-occupied commercial real estate purchases, equipment purchases, debt refinancing, working capital, lines of credit, and new construction, as well as business expansion costs. Virginia Community Capital works with municipalities to spur economic development by lending to their IDAs and EDAs. Typically, IDAs and EDAs are the economic conduit for business recruitment and/or expansion for their respective municipalities. BCC lends directly to IDAs and EDAs with a moral obligation from their city or county. The IDA will then lease the building and/or equipment to the business with the same terms and conditions as the BCC loan, sometimes adding an administration or servicing fee to cover their costs. We have some great examples of these type of transactions today, and our panelists are the outside-the-box thinkers that are making an impact in their communities. I've had the pleasure of working with Billy Roberts, the Community Development Director and IDA Secretary for the town of Bluefield, Virginia. In 2019, the town of Bluefield's Industrial Development Authority, IDA, bought an empty building in the heart of its Southwest Virginia downtown. You can see the before on your left and then the after on your right. The vision was to turn this 5,400 square foot commercial building, once a home to a carpet store, a dance theater, a fitness center, and a medical equipment company, into a small business and retail incubator to accelerate business growth. Colin O'Donnell, the owner and operator of The Grind, a coffee and bagel shop in Bluefield, Virginia, has worked with Billy in opening his business in the revitalized building. You can follow The Grind's progress on his Facebook page and Instagram. You just search for The Grind Bluefield, and his website has some great blogs at www.thegrindbluefield.com. In addition to The Grind, they will have an axe throwing business and a beauty school with a total of 10 full-time and 20 part-time jobs created. Another mover and shaker that I've had the opportunity to work with is David Manley, the Executive Director of the Joint IDA for Wythe County, Wytheville, and Rural Retreat. You may have seen the governor's announcement on April 8th of this year that STS Group AG, a leading global systems supplier of interior and exterior parts for commercial vehicles, will invest $39 million to establish its first U.S. manufacturing operation in Wythe County's Progress Park. The new facility, operating as a subsidiary of STS Group North America, will supply Volvo trucks in Pulaski County and other truck and automotive facilities throughout the Midwest and Southeastern U.S. markets. Virginia successfully competed with North Carolina for the project, which will create 120 new jobs. I'm excited to have all three panelists here today to talk about how they are making things happen in their communities and take questions from you guys. Remember, we want you in the audience to put your questions in the Q&A. And I'm going to get us started with some questions. Billy, what were some of the initial challenges you faced when trying to get your project off the ground?
Some of the initial challenges included communication with all types of people, but most importantly, because the council member, the town of Bluefield Council is they fund the IDA. It took lots of time and lots of planning, I guess, putting those visions onto paper so that it could be communicated well to 14 people. So that was probably the biggest challenge. And one of the other challenges was time. It takes a lot of time to make sure you're covering all your bases and all of these people are comfortable with your vision, with the IDA's vision, with the town's vision, and making sure all those come together. In the meantime, you have business owners who are ready to open and start their businesses and make money. So it is definitely, it's a task to make sure that you're balancing all of that.
Great, thank you. Colin, as a small business owner, how did you work with Billy and the IDA to bring your concept to life?
So it was, as BJ said, it was a ton of communication. And so we worked really closely together with the town to be able to provide them a really foundational basis for what our dream was and what we envisioned for downtown, because we realized it wasn't just about us, right? And it affects all of downtown. So there wasn't just a singular view of what was happening here. Like we're just going to put in a coffee shop and then move on about our day. It was about creating a cohesive downtown environment that would be an anchor for other businesses. And so getting the vision right was incredibly important. And then I would say the other thing was, as a startup, we had to pivot before we even had the chance to get our feet on the ground moving into that food truck setup. And so working with the town to explain, hey, this is how we're going to sling bagels on the front lawn of downtown until we can get our feet moving, right? Was a crazy challenge in and of itself, and being able to get all that paperwork done quickly so we could immediately pivot and move in the right direction was integral to our success.
Let's not forget all of this during a pandemic too. So that added its own level of challenges for sure. David, normally these types of projects have more than one funding stream. Can you share with our audience some of the funding opportunities you're able to access for different projects, such as grants, state, local, that type of thing?
Thanks, Cindy. And, certainly for a project of substantial investment, there's often going to be some different funding partners at the table, like you said. They might be a combination of public and private sector. Depends on who's bringing the capital and who's bringing some of the inducements. And oftentimes incentives are available for projects of a certain size and scale, especially in tradable sectors. So if you're looking at a manufacturing project, for example, you can often leverage funds from the Commonwealth through VEDP and perhaps other funding agencies like the Tobacco Commission, should you happen to be in that region, enterprise zone programs, should you happen to have one of those. The localities can contribute to those financing packages, and private sector partners as well. You can look to your utility partners, transportation partners, and other things. incentives as a topic are, not always popular, but when you consider them to be tools that help address an unmet need, it's much easier to talk about. When you talk about incentive money to maybe connect a water line or to extend a roadway or to bring some sort of utility to the site that's needed, it's much more palatable for many folks than checks being written. Virginia is not known as a big incentive state, but some states do just write big checks. So sometimes that's tough to compete against as well. But public and private sector, federal and state dollars, I would say, use your networks and see what you can bring to the table. And sometimes it's not necessarily money, but it's programmatic and technical support as well that can help make a difference.
Some of those I hadn't even thought of. Those were some good ideas. Billy, what do you wish you had known in the beginning that maybe you learned after the fact? The 2020 question.
Well, I don't want to take up your whole hour, but I'll limit it to the top three. I mean, you have to be like, echoing what Colin said about pivoting and that type of thing. The project was constantly changing. I think COVID had a lot to do with it, but when we started with the project, it started out as one simple build out that was going to be about $30,000, and we're going to get this business in there. And within a matter of months, just months, it expanded into the 3 businesses and an entire renovation of the outside and inside. So just, you're on a roller coaster and you're trying to, dot your I's and cross your T's the whole time. So constant changing, pivoting, adjusting, just expect it. It's all going to change the whole time. If you are doing construction of any type, whatever your contractor tells you, times that by 7. Just use dog years for all of that, and you should be okay. And then again, if you're doing renovations or construction of any type, just prepare yourself to be at the site every single day. I mean, you have a general contractor. That's what we did. We dealt with one person to kind of deal with all the other subcontractors and that type of thing. But you have to be there every day just to be able to manage and be on top of things, especially when time is of the essence. And it is when you have people who are trying to open up businesses. So you just expect it and start in that way, and everything will go smooth.
Thank you. I want to remind our audience that we will be taking questions. So put your questions in the Q&A feature. We're not taking the questions in the chat, but go ahead and put your questions in there. Now's your time to speak to the experts on some of the things that they learned in the process, and maybe it will save you some time and headache. David, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, go ahead and ask you the same question that I just asked Billy. What do you wish you had known in the beginning? Is there any tips that you can provide the audience that would save them maybe some headache?
I'll echo a bit of what she said. You have to totally expect for your timetable to be thrown out the window. Not only are there the normal challenges, the hurry up and wait that you get with projects a lot, but when we were about to finalize a lot of our agreement about a year and a half ago, COVID started to slam Europe. COVID began to slam us. And so all the normal routine that we would have trying to bring this project home was gone. We had to keep it alive. We had to nurture it through some really trying economic times, both here and in Europe. And, make sure it remained viable, make sure that it was still something that would work here. We had to really turn on our problem solving skills and diplomatic skills as well. Parties change, people change, ideas change. So remaining adaptable, I think, is at the top of what you must do. And we were fortunate that COVID didn't totally snuff out the deal, and it survived along with some other projects. And just reminding you, your team, your partners, that everybody wants the same conclusion in the end. We're all driving toward the same outcome. And even though we may have different ways of getting there, we may have different requirements, we have different stakeholders and audiences we have to please. Ultimately, our goal is all the same.
That's great. I'm hearing flexibility and adaptability are key in setting expectations. So, Colin, what advice would you have for anyone trying to do a project similar to yours?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is take action now. So every second you spend waiting, thinking, considering is 1 second that's taken away from the action you need to take right now. The second would be whatever your dream is, expand it and then expand it again to the point where it's slightly uncomfortable. And that's where your dream is actually headed towards. Because as Billy had said, we had a goal, which was basically just a small town coffee shop, and it elated itself into this massive project that took, the whole town came together really for it. And then I would say, while you're doing your financial plannings and your business plannings, that once you're done with that, you should be revising that in the beginning, upwards of two times a week, maybe even more. And I'm not like, that's not even dramatic by any stretch of the imagination. Our financial analysis, our business plan was literally changing week over week. And so I would sit down every Wednesday and Sunday, and I would update our business plan, our financials. I would go over the projections. I would sit down with my team and have a meeting. And then the third thing is time management. We all have the same 24 hours, and how you utilize those 24 hours is extremely important. So when I'm having a 10-minute meeting with 5 people, I'm actually wasting 50 minutes. I'm not just wasting 10. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is within the realm of time management, that you're updating your project constantly, and that you're dreaming a little bit outside the box to the point where you're slightly uncomfortable, because all of that will culminate to a successful launch of your business, especially in these very odd times where supply chain shortages exist and financials are sometimes difficult to come by. So you really got to be on top of your game and manage your time. I would say that is the biggest factor into determining success here.
You could probably teach startup business classes. Those are some good tips. Billy, what advice would you have for anyone trying to do a project similar to yours?
Work with dependable partners in every way, lending, contractors, when you're choosing your businesses that you're trying to help grow. When everybody has kind of the same goals, and they take it the same scale of seriousness, everything goes a lot smoother that way. Document some more. It will help you in the long run, especially when things are moving at a very massive pace. So I know you're going to have 1,000 conversations. Take the time to come back and put it in an email, remind everybody what you talked about. That's very important, I think. And then one of the biggest things that helped me in the beginning, when we were trying to figure out where this project was going to go, is reaching out to others who have completed similar projects. So I talked to Floyd County a whole lot. They do a lot of property management and similar type things, and they were so friendly and helped. They shared some templates for lease agreements and that type of thing. So that was extremely helpful in the beginning of the process, for sure.
Super good ideas. Thank you. So David, same question for you. What advice would you have for anyone trying to do a project similar to yours?
I would say build your team early with quality partners. And I'm not just talking about the people you work with on a daily basis. You'll want good, strong legal counsel. You'll want some good financial counseling, advisor type activity, somebody that can help you run different financial models to make sure that it's going to work, so that when you do make your case to elected officials or your own board or to the community, that you've got justification for doing what you're going to do. It's a major undertaking for any community to take on any type of financing in a public-private partnership. So you've got to make sure that it's done properly and that all the homework is done before you jump into something that you're not ready for. Our trust is sacred with the public and with the public sector dollars. And so when we leverage those with the private sector, we have to make sure it's done in a way that's not going to come back to bite us, frankly. So it's a build your team, build confidence, do your homework, and make sure you run through lots of different scenarios that show you the realities of what it's going to look like.
Great. I know I'm asking all the questions right now, but the audience, we're getting several questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to ask one more, and then we're going to jump over to the audience Q&A. And this question would be for Billy and David. And Billy, I'll have you go first. What made working with a community development lender like BCC the right option for your project?
You guys were extremely responsive. You asked a lot of questions to try to figure out what our needs were. You listened to those needs. You took the time to understand exactly what our goal was at the end and what we needed to complete the project and to be successful. And honestly, it was the easiest part of this whole process was the lending.
Yay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
That's not always the case, I'm sure.
Yeah.
David, how about you? What made working with a community development lender like BCC the right choice for you?
I think knowing that Virginia Community Capital had similar goals to us to help us move the needle in a positive direction for our community in the long term, knowing that that was an underlying reason for your participation was important to us. And furthermore, knowing, or I guess your pragmatic nature, problem solving, wanting to do, eliminate barriers just like we do to making the project work, but doing so in a sensible fashion, doing so in a way that was justifiable to your leadership and to your lending structure. So I would think our common sort of viewpoint toward doing things the right way and moving things in the right direction was a comfort to us. Further, and secondly, I would say helping us convene a collective to help make the financing work was critical. We would not have gotten across the finish line, but for the team that you were critical in helping us put together. So we appreciate that.
I know I personally have enjoyed working with all of you. When you have partners, which I consider us partners now, that are as motivated and go-getter and outside the box thinkers as you guys, it makes my job a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A from the audience. So again, put your questions in the Q&A. And we'll just have a fire round of questions. How are you able to convince your municipality to provide a moral obligation for your project? Good question. Billy, you want to take that one?
Sure. It's a process. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's, we have 7 people on town council, we have 7 people on the IDA, and you have to communicate with all of them to get the project going off its feet. But one of the things that I did, we're working with businesses and we give them advice on what to do. The number one thing is make a business plan. You need a business plan, and then we'll go from there. So put together like a business plan that explained everything from start to finish, goals, objectives, financials, and it was all there in black and white. And I was able to provide that to them after we had conversations and presentations and that type of thing. And I really think that was probably one of the best things that we did. And we had to do this fast because everything happened really fast. But even with me going through the process and having to implement and take care of things, having that guide was great. It was one of the better things we did in the beginning.
And I think Colin stressed the importance of visiting that business plan. You don't just create it and put it on a shelf, for sure. It's a living document. David, so how would you answer that question in that, how were you able to convince in your case would have been the county, to provide a moral obligation for your project?
Sure. Like Billy, I also answer to a board appointed by the county and the two towns here. So getting buy-in from all your partners is critical from the outset. And I think the first step in that, well, I think you have to do these things in parallel. First, you have to articulate a vision that makes sense to your audience and put together something coherent that people can follow and see how you get from A to B to C and further in down the line. Simultaneously, you have to work financial models and figure out the return on investment for whatever the undertaking is you're about to do. Revenue is important. Job creation is important. What are the intangible benefits to the community? And I think as a sort of third leg to the stool, we looked at the potential for growth of our automotive cluster. We've already got several companies here that work in the automotive sector as tier one and other type suppliers. And we looked at this as a way to further beef that sector up and invite other growth. Success begets more success. And we thought putting this automotive supplier here, in addition to those that we have already, we're only going to increase our visibility as a viable place to do that kind of work.
Makes sense. Thank you. What other supports or technical assistance do you offer entrepreneurs after they launch? And I may tag that one to Colin after I'm gonna get Billy to answer this, and then Colin, I'm gonna ask you what technical support or assistance you received as you were launching your business. So Billy, do you have specific type programs, or how do you provide assistance to your businesses once they open?
We're in contact with them. It just depends on what their need is, really. Some businesses require a little more than others. These businesses are the ones that are in the Envision Center, in the incubator. We work pretty closely with them through the entire process, and even now. So now, like, let's say someone gets to a moment to where they have some cash flow issues or that type of thing. We have the resources to say, let me point you in this direction. Let me point you in this direction. Colin has been wonderful. He is at the top of the list. Anything that we have given him as far as make sure you shake this person's hand. Go, there's this resource available. He doesn't hesitate. He is on it, and he takes advantage of everything that we have offered to him as far as resources. And that's key too. We can give them a whole list of things to do, but it's up to the business individually to take off with that. And I think that's what separates some of the businesses. But right now, with this particular project, property management is the biggest thing right now. So that, like, there's a sink leak, and doing that type of thing, and figuring out that process and how to do that. That's one of the bigger things too. But Colin, he could probably say a little more about how we've supported them through the rest of it.
Yeah, as Ms. Roberts was saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so there are a plethora of resources available, especially in this region. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and I can attest to the fact there is no support like I have ever seen here. I mean, there is a ton of support here compared to other regions and places. So working with the IDA really carefully on the town and county level was huge. Most people don't realize that there's also a county IDA besides your town. So you can go to multiple different sources, and they work hand in hand with the Small Business Administration individuals, such as Margie Douglas over there at the Small Business Administration in Southwest Virginia Community College. So we worked really closely with them, and we competed very aggressively for every grant, resource that was available. And the way that we were able to come out on top with those resources was very simple. It was updating that business plan, keeping it 100% in check, and making sure that what we were putting out there was the most recent information, truthful information, moral information, and all of it was ethical and in line. And so everything we did, we dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And moving forward past that, that opening phase, because we were able to secure these resources, so we're still in college. So we're all Bluefield College students. And so we worked with the Bluefield College Business Department really closely. Could you edit this for us? Could you take a look? Were there grammar mistakes? Simple stuff that makes a big difference when you're projecting yourself onto the business stage in front of your community. And so when we came to open time here and it's time to get rolling, there was no, well, we'll see if we can break even in 1 year. We were able to break even and then turn a profit within our first month of operation. It's a huge, huge milestone for us because we were able to follow this yellow brick road of resources from the town to the statewide level that allowed us to do what we've done and provide these jobs and do so securely. So they're there. You just have to reach out. You have to reach out to your local IDA and town government, and I promise you'll find a treasure trove of information.
Great, thank you. Were there any tax credits involved? David, I'll point that one to you, and it doesn't have to be specifically on this project, but have you used tax credits on any projects that you worked on maybe recently?
Not directly on any industrial or this type of economic development project, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Millwall Theater downtown historic restoration project. That is a tax credit project, and that's another case in which we were smart enough to bring in experts, and because that's a very complicated field to navigate. So it's new market and historic tax credits, both state and federal, and that's out of my professional depth, and getting the help in has been critical to helping move that project forward.
Perfect. Okay, another question from our audience. How do you take an out-of-the-box idea and turn it into something in a pitch that someone not familiar with your offering, so they see it as you do? In other words, worth the investment. So I think where we're going with that would be how you would convince, and I'm just going to guess that they're referencing how you can convince your boards, because you've both mentioned that, Billy and David, you've both mentioned you have your IDA or EDA board, and then you have the locality, which would be your board of supervisors or your city council. So you're having to take what you see as your vision or your idea, and you're having to convince them. So I think, I don't know if Billy, if you had anything else to add to that. I know you mentioned having a business plan. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
Sorry. Yeah, more specifically, I guess maybe this will answer the question a little better. So in our locality, the council, the town of Bluefield is actually the IDA's funding comes from the town. So for anything that the IDA has ever wanted to do, we've had to go to the town council and say, hey, can you give this money? What had happened in September of, actually it was like July of 2019, when that building became available, that's in the heart of downtown. The IDA was like, wow, that's in the center of our downtown. Wouldn't it be awesome? Because we had a lot of underutilized space in our downtown. Everything was full, or everything was owned. It was just kind of underutilized and didn't really go with our redevelopment plan. So we're like, what an opportunity to be able to own this piece of property and help, utilize the space to, because we had done a lot of surveys and a lot of research on what people wanted in our downtown. So we knew what we could do with it, what kind of businesses that we could encourage to have a space downtown. So with that, we had to go to the town council and say, hey, will you give us this money to buy this building? And so we had just had that happen, right? And they did. They saw the vision and were like, sure, here's a little over $100,000 to buy this building. From then, we had the discussion on how we could be more self-sufficient, the IDA. How do we get to a point to where we don't always have to go to council and ask for money? And of course, there's grants and there's, those type of funding that's available. But a lot of the times, in our experience, it takes a lot of time. So what we do with the money that we receive, we charge a lease amount to all of the tenants. That money gets put into an account that will eventually be our local revolving loan fund, so that we will be able to help more locally to new startups and to new businesses or expansions and that type of thing. And then that way we don't constantly have to go back to council to ask for that money. And that was the pitch. That was like, okay, so that's how we got the 7 of council to say, yeah, this is a great idea. This is, this is their plan on how to be, self-sustainable. Let's do it.
Perfect. So it's more than just revitalizing the building. You took the
Right.
whole vision of what we see can come from this. So awesome.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. I mean, you can ask Colin, but I think it's cool. Like, they're going to have to pay rent somewhere anyway. So it's a nice feeling that the amount of money that you're paying goes into helping future businesses as well.
Cindy, can I add something to that?
Sure.
I would say, as far as the actual pitch and presentation to the elected officials or to your board or whatever, you want to manage expectations to a degree, but you need to reduce things to manageable bites and do that without insulting anybody's intelligence, but simultaneously make sure that all the details they might ask about are available. You want to be able to share your work, show your work if necessary, and be prepared to answer whatever questions you might imagine arising. That builds your credibility. And when you're working with people like the financial consultants and attorneys and whoever is on your team at that point to build the project, rely on them too. There's something to be said for bringing experts to the table.
Colin, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, from the entrepreneurial side of things, when you're pitching that idea and you have to give your plans to the town, you don't pitch the dream, because no one's sold on the dream. You could say that we want this bustling downtown. We see all these people walking around here shopping all day. You sell the return on the dream, and that's how you get your project moving forward. So I'm selling the fact that we'll have $3,000 in meals tax every month added to town revenue. I'm selling the fact that we're bringing the college downtown. I'm selling the fact that we're creating jobs. And then on Billy's side of things, she's selling the vision, because that's her side of things. So when those two combine, it creates a harmonious ideal that you can pitch successfully without sounding kind of cuckoo almost, where you're like, this is just out of the realm of possibilities. So you pitch a return on the dream from the entrepreneurial side of things.
Gotcha. Sounds like that strategy works on both sides, whether you're the IDA or you're the entrepreneur. This is an interesting question. Is PACE financing under consideration for the town or county? It looks like the building, it may be the downtown building they're referencing there, can use solar panels, but as a major renovation effort, isofoam insulation and geothermal HVAC should have been part of the design, but without PACE financing providing the free capital, these things do not happen. So I think this is directed to you, Billy, and I don't know if you're familiar with PACE financing. And I think it's targeted towards solar, and that we may need to do a whole nother webinar on that type of financing, but VCC is active in the solar financing space as well. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Billy.
No, not familiar with that, but if you do a webinar, I'll sign up for it.
Yeah, right. Okay. What are some of the ways VCC helped in the process? I know you've mentioned some. Are there any other specific things that we helped you with that maybe we haven't mentioned?
I'll jump in real quickly, Cindy, just to say, adding another layer of the due diligence that you undertook always helps us be confident in our decision making and the locality and our other funding partners. We all go about it differently. and we all access different information. But when if a red flag arises, sharing that with your partners from the get-go, I think is a great way to build confidence in your teammates. So knowing VCC was doing its own due diligence in addition to ours and our other partners was just nice to have.
Thank you. Just another set of eyes at the table is always helpful. Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, Billy.
I'll just add to that too. I mean, if you're working in local government and again, with the whole like building your case, your credibility and that type of thing, VCC is a great name. Most people in municipalities know that name and know what it means, and it helps that way too. And then they have so many, there are so many options available. So it's, being able to talk with them and then them help you find a fit for your particular project. Because Cindy and I talk all the time. I call her all the time about different things, even with other economic development projects, even in the private sector and that type of thing, to see if she can help with them. So yeah, it's definitely a partnership.
I like to say if we don't have the answer or if we can't do it, we'll try to connect you with somebody that can help. We don't like to be a closed door for sure. I think this question may be directed to me. How do you minimize bad loans? And then if you all had anything to add to that, feel free. I would say that the main thing that that we look for as a lender is there enough cash flow to make that payment? Does that business or that municipality have enough income after all their expenses to make this loan payment? And pretty much any of the other like collateral shortfall or other things we can find mitigants for, but we definitely don't want to set a borrower up for failure by lending them money that we know they can't afford to pay the payment. So I would say that's the main thing. That's kind of, I think, lending 101. And David or Billy, I'm not sure, do either of you have a revolving loan fund yet that you're managing? Billy doesn't yet.
Yeah, we do. And it's sort of, it's feast and famine in that world too. It seems like we're very busy with that fund sometimes and then not. Access to capital has always been a challenge. I don't mean just in Southwest Virginia, but generally for small business and lots of smaller communities especially. And so it's been a critical piece to help some entrepreneurs put their financing package together. It's rarely, if ever, the lead on something like that, but it can be help bridge some needs and getting somebody launched or growing or something along those lines. So just in our case, for example, we have a loan committee. We do some due diligence on our own. They have an approval, then our board has an approval past our administrative work. So we have a couple layers of checks and balances for that.
All right, here's another one. Project finance is an art in and of itself. Did you do your models and projections internally, or did you call in a consultant for the heavy Excel work? I think Billy and David's answered. Well, Colin, you can jump in on this too. Let's start with you, Colin. Did you prepare your projection yourself, or did you get professional help with that?
So I did prepare it myself. And the way that I went about preparing it was I took multiple different sources. So there's QSR, which is Quick Service Restaurant Magazine. There's obviously plenty of labor statistic data from the Department of Labor. There's a ton of restaurant statistics, obviously one of the biggest competitive markets in the United States. And we took the average of 1,000 different restaurants ranging from that were relative to what we were doing, from small to large. And we took their averages and then combined that into one really big national average. And so from there, we were able to get the average ticket amount that customers should be spending, how many customers we need each day to make our business model successful and profitable, the cost of utilities from all those. So we compiled a massive amount of data, took the average, and then after we had that average, we bumped it up 20%, right? Because you got inflation, you have a really odd time with pandemic stuff. And so every week that we redid our models and relooked at everything, and even now it's changed coming out of the pandemic, we bumped it up 20% in costs. So we kept the ticket number the same, assuming the lowest possible amount that someone would buy. And then we bumped everything else that was accounts payable up 20% to make it dramatic. And that's how we were able to get our 5-year financial plan. And that's the other thing. Some people will only make you do 3 years of financial planning, but you should do a longer financial planning, and it should be month over month. And if it sounds extensive, it's because it is. It should take you 3 to 4 weeks to be able to put something like that together if you're spending an egregious amount of time on it. So it's really time intensive. You could hire someone, but knowing it personally makes it a lot easier to adjust to it in the long run.
Colin, I think it's safe to say you're going to be getting inquiries for a franchise after this webinar. David, how about you with your project? Did you prepare those projections internally or professional help?
Both and more. We start with sort of an internal spitballing sort of measure. It's not something I put up against what an economist or a financial consultant could do, but we do sort of have to get past a certain level of certainty that a project is plausible and it's going to work. And in this case, because we were undertaking the public-private partnership and financing, we wanted to make sure that we had all the correct information. So we relied on our partners at the state to assist us with some initial economic modeling, and then we moved on to contract some with an expert. And it was money very well spent. When you're looking at the depth of the financial agreement you're entering into, you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and with the correct facts informing your decision making.
Great. Billy, anything you would add on your project?
Well, we're on a much smaller level, $170,000, that type of thing was our loan. We did everything internally, but I will say that I am very, very lucky to have a very strong IDA board. And 4 out of my 7 IDA members have some sort of financial background. One of them is a just recently retired COO of First Community Bank headquarters. So the knowledge is there, which makes you feel, it gives you a confidence when you're moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see here. Well, we've got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to go through these. Is there a pre-qualification process for a business loan? If so, what does that look like? I'll go ahead and answer that one. I think the first step is just make a phone call. Let's talk about it and see if the project is a fit. And I think I would say that for VCC and any lender. Just make reach out, connect with us, and let's talk about it. If it's not a fit for us, it may be we may be able to connect you with another lender, and I think most lenders would answer it that way. Next question: what does an ideal project look like when it comes across your desk? That's a good one. If there is such a thing as an ideal, I don't know that any two deals are the same. David, is there an ideal project that would come across your desk?
I think we're more likely to find Sasquatch or a unicorn before we see the ideal project. But some ideal characteristics would be community mindedness, and the company you're working with is not seeking just to pad its bottom line with your resources, that they want to be good members of your business community. I would say if they lead with asking about incentives, that's probably not the best approach. You want to make sure that it's a good fit for your community, your organization, their culture, your culture. Ideally, they would need not lots of public resources, but they would contribute a lot. They would not need a lot of water or sewer or gas, but they would be paying good wages. So, these things don't ever all line up. But there are times when you do check off more boxes than others, and you realize that's something you really want to put extra effort into.
Billy, would you have anything you would want to add to that? What an ideal project would look like?
Well, ditto with what David said. And I think that's on every scale, large, small, whatever. You know, Colin's a great example of that. I mean, I say it all the time. He was the perfect business partner to start this project because of his motivation. I mean, he's 20, what are you, 27 years old? And all of his business partners are in their 20s, and you've just never seen anything like it before. But anyway, it just, you know, just perfect timing, perfect harmony.
Yeah, I can see you guys will definitely want to hang on to Colin. Let's see, I think I was muted. Hold on a second. We got one more here. We are being bombarded with financial assistance offers right now. How do we best choose who to pursue and when to take on financing? I made the mistake last year to wait until I really needed the money, and it was much harder to get help. I have yet to figure out when to listen to the offers. David and the revolving credit triggered this question. Okay, so they're being bombarded with financial assistance offers right now, and they're trying to figure out how to choose which to pursue to take on financing. Is that something that you could chime in on, David?
Yeah, I would say you're fortunate if you're being bombarded with offers for financial assistance. That's not always the case. And, you know, even in our case, there were very willing financial partners, and then there were many more that didn't think this was something they wanted to undertake. And we certainly understand it's a business decision. But that being said, you need to be able to compare all your offers apples to apples. And so you need to be able to line up, you know, all the different elements of the deal to make sure that you can compare them legitimately side by side. You need to develop good relationships with those individual bankers. And in my experience, starting with the local and community banks, you generally have a little more luck than when you're dealing with a sort of faceless, nameless type operation. And I would encourage you to get to know those institutions, the type of projects they like, and discuss opportunities for partnership, because generally nobody's very shy about saying, yeah, that's something we'd be interested in talking with you about. So go ahead and do that homework early, do it often, because those things change over time. And then you'll have a good basis from which to begin that decision-making process.
Great. I think we made it through all of our questions. We've got 6 minutes to spare. Is there anything that we've not asked you that you would love to share with the audience, or did we cover everything? Guys are feeling good? Okay. As I mentioned at the top of the discussion, a follow-up email will be sent to everyone who registered for this event next week, and it will include a link to the recording of this webinar and additional resources. If you'd like to contact our team or learn more about lending at VCC, please visit our website at www.vacommunitycapital.org. And this concludes our webinar. Thank you. Have a great day.